Hello, you're Matthew's mother, right?
The woman on the other end of the phone sounded very rushed. I racked my brain right there but couldn't think of any connection. It's time to close. Matthew is waiting, so please hurry and come pick him up. She continued.
Excuse me, but who are you?
So I asked. Turns out, the caller was a preschool teacher I didn't know, and after asking for details, a shocking truth was revealed. My name is Jennifer, a 28-year-old office worker. Thankfully, I enjoy my job and lead a fulfilling life. Since I was never really good at socializing, I focused solely on working hard as my main virtue when I first started my job. Many people at work took notice of me, and I felt blessed. Thanks to them, I've been able to keep working up to this point. My boss, Joseph, who has been looking out for me since I started, is 50 years old. At first, I felt tense due to the age difference, but he has always taken care of me, teaching me not just about work but also important manners as a working adult. He also wanted to hear the thoughts of the younger generation, often asking for advice humbly from his colleagues. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you, it's really helpful. He would always make sure to express his gratitude verbally. It might seem like a small thing, but it was motivating for me. In these times of change, there's much to learn from the younger generation. This was his mantra, and he never stopped thinking about what's best for the company and his coworkers. He was the ideal boss for me, and I've respected him deeply. So, I tried to learn as much as I could from him and applied it in how I interacted with my subordinates. While handling daily tasks, I also made sure to maintain proper manners when dealing with people. Not just instructing, but also bringing out the best in them and praising their efforts. It's not easy, but it's crucial when working as a team. Thanks to my diligence, I gained the trust of my colleagues and smoothly advanced my career. One day. We're about to start a major project soon. Would you like to join? My boss said. Seeing it as a rare opportunity, I immediately agreed. Though I was nervous, I was thrilled that everyone in the department promised their full cooperation. When stuck, the goal wasn't to solve everything alone to gain recognition, but to seek opinions for better outcomes and create something together. This mindset has made working much easier for me. Now, as things have gotten busier, I spend more of my weekends refreshing myself. My hobby is watching animals. I visit various pet shops, find solace in the animals, and enjoy imagining having my own pets. I've lived in my current apartment since I started working. It's a bit small. It's a no-pet building, so I'm planning to move to a pet-friendly place for a luxurious life with my beloved pets. On weekends, I spend time planning my next living situation, which has become a source of joy. Being curious by nature, I enjoy researching various animals, their traits, and how they'd fit in a home, considering all possibilities. I also seek advice from pet owners to learn more. As for romance, as I've gotten older, I hear more about people getting married and feel the pressure to explore dating scenes. Initially, I participated thinking of it as a social learning experience, but gradually, I grew tired of it. Having little interest in romance, I've recently been politely declining, preferring to spend my limited time on my hobbies. One day off. As usual, after being comforted by pets at the pet shop and on my way home, I received a call from an unknown number. I usually don't answer, but considering the ongoing major project involving many people, I thought it might be a business call. Hello? As I spoke, the woman on the other end, in a rushed voice.
Hello. You're Matthew's mother, aren't you? It's well past pickup time, but you haven't come yet?
Said. Of course, I had no clue and was completely baffled. To clarify the situation, ready to be scolded, I asked.
Excuse me, but who are you?
After the woman mentioned an unfamiliar preschool's name, she said, puzzled,
I'm sorry, it was a mistake.
and hung up. Stunned, I was about to collect my thoughts when the phone rang again. Answering the phone again. I'm really sorry to bother you again. But after checking with Matthew's father, it seems this is indeed the correct number, so please hurry and come pick him up. The woman from before said in a stern tone. I immediately responded.
I'm sorry, but I'm not married, nor do I have any children.
To which she replied,
What do you mean?
Sounding confused. Thinking we would just confuse each other more over the phone, I suggested.
I'd like to clarify the situation, so I'll come visit once.
And got permission to head to the preschool. Upon arrival and entering, one child saw me and joyfully ran towards me,
Mom!
shouting. However, the moment he saw my face up close and realized I wasn't his mother, he went back to the teacher. Not Mom. When will she come? Seeing the child seek comfort from the teacher, my heart felt a bit heavy. I was taken to a separate room to hear the full story from the teacher. Apparently, my name and contact information had been submitted to the preschool without my consent. Matthew is from a single-parent family, and the protocol was to contact the father first, then the grandfather, and me, supposedly his common-law wife, third.
According to Matthew's father, they're not married yet but planning to live together soon.
The teacher looked sternly at the list of emergency contacts for Matthew. After pleading my case about my contact being used without my permission, she gave me only the names of Matthew's father and grandfather.
Are you kidding me?
Turns out, Matthew was my boss's grandson. The boss's surname is quite unique in this area. There's no one else with the same full name, so if it matches, it's likely him. It made sense that my boss could use my contact information without my consent. However, if it truly was my boss who used my name, I couldn't fathom why. I had never heard any mention of this from him before, and all I knew was that his son was a single father doing his best to raise his child. The mystery deepened, and I left the preschool after saying goodbye to the teacher. The next day, after arriving at work, I confronted my boss immediately. To my surprise, he admitted to using my contact information without hesitation and didn't seem to think it was wrong at all. Well, I've been taking care of you at work, so cut me some slack. My son has it tough being a single parent. Plus, he likes you. You haven't had a boyfriend in a while, right? It's tough if you don't have kids when you're young. I'll have you marry my son. He said this with a smile as if it was nothing out of the ordinary. I was so shocked that I lost my words. You're a great subordinate, so I'm sure you'll do well as my son's wife too. My boss continued with this unbelievable statement. I felt betrayed by the boss I trusted and also felt a sense of revulsion. Was all his concern for me up to this point because of this? While I was in confusion, a meeting with his son was arranged without my consent. It's true, when you're really surprised, you find yourself speechless, and I felt desperate, fearing my life was getting out of control. Then, during lunch break, I decided it was time to consult someone, and prepared meticulously for the day I would meet my boss's son. The day came, and in a private room of a fancy restaurant, my cheerful boss and his son were sitting, talking. Jennifer, thank you for coming today to discuss the arrangement with my son, Charles. I'd be happy if we could have a thorough discussion. My boss, oblivious to how I felt, went on. His son, without even greeting me, looked me over from head to toe as if evaluating me. The moment my boss mentioned the wedding, I denied it.
I'm sorry, but I never agreed to marry your son. Can we not rush this discussion?
Standing up to them was nerve-wracking, but unlike before, I wasn't alone, which gave me strength to speak clearly. My boss glared at me, but I continued.
You did use my contact information as an emergency contact for the preschool, right? And even wrote that I was his common-law wife. That's a serious crime.
He responded.
My son is at the prime of his work life, so he can't go pick him up. Since you're going to marry my son, it's normal to give the wife-to-be's number, isn't it? What do you mean by suing?
And his son added,
I'm the son of your elite boss, who's been taking care of your work. You should feel lucky to be able to marry me.
As the situation escalated beyond control, I was about to call for help when two women entered the private room.
Joseph, Charles. Both of you need to stop this at once.
Startled at their names being called, the two men froze at the sight of a woman. The first to scold my boss was his son's ex-wife, Margaret.
Listening to you talk, you've been incredibly rude to Jennifer.
Then the other woman said, I am representing both of you as your lawyer. And showed her business card to my boss and his son. Shocked, my boss and his son suddenly shrank back, as if their previous bravado was a lie. Actually, the person I had consulted was Dorothy, a lawyer and a friend. We sometimes hang out privately, but I never imagined needing her professional help. Dorothy mentioned,
When I saw the phone number, I couldn't believe it, but you were indeed caught in a serious situation.
And despite being busy, she took my concerns to heart. I told her about the unknown call from the preschool, claiming me as a de facto wife, and showed her the photos. Dorothy then revealed,
Actually, Charles's ex-wife had consulted me about their child. It's best if she joins us too, considering the invasion of your privacy with your phone number.
And quickly introduced me to the ex-wife. Meeting the ex-wife for the first time, I was nervous about what kind of person she would be. When Dorothy told me about it, I felt relieved that there might be a solution. Thank you so much. But she expressed her gratitude politely. Despite thinking it was unnecessary, I also expressed,
No, thank you for coming. I'm very grateful.
Feeling glad I took action.
Years ago, when I divorced Charles, I was working part-time. Since Charles worked for a big company, I gave him custody for Matthew's future. I never imagined it would lead to this. I'm so sorry.
The ex-wife apologized, although it wasn't her fault. I assured her there was no need to apologize and encouraged her to stop, then she shared more details. After the divorce, she moved nearby to be close to Matthew, hearing rumors that Charles wasn't actually taking care of their son. Concerned, she spoke with Charles, who admitted to neglecting Matthew, but refused to discuss custody changes to avoid paying child support, as she consulted with Dorothy. While married, the ex-wife often interacted with Matthew, but Charles seemed indifferent, not out of lack of interest but negligence. Researching my boss's son revealed various issues. A preschool teacher showed me Matthew's notebook, indicating pickup times, revealing that post-divorce, Charles initially left work early for pickups but recently started arriving just in time. Teachers testified to repeated last-minute work excuses for his absence. Moreover, Charles began using the preschool on supposed off days, raising concerns about family time. Despite suggestions to spend weekends with Matthew, Charles excused his absence with sudden work, always informing the preschool at the last moment. He was always troubled by last-minute notifications that work had come up. However, it turns out that his boss's son had been lying about having work, instead dropping Matthew off at preschool or with the boss's couple to go out and play. He also dressed Matthew in the same clothes almost every day, never buying him anything new, leading Matthew to become indifferent. It also came to light that he had been using the alimony his ex-wife had been sending for his own leisure. Hearing this, I couldn't help but feel disgusted with the boss's son. The ex-wife was tearful.
If only I had noticed sooner and taken action.
Saying. Dorothy presented the evidence to the boss and his son, and finally, "Dorothy, to the preschool without permission," she stated clearly. The faces of the boss and his son turned pale. The boss. "Jennifer, Margaret, please, I'll pay this time, just spare me the lawsuit," pleaded. "I'll make Charles apologize too, please forgive us," and apologized. I felt that forgiving them now would only result in the boss paying off the situation, and it seemed unlikely that his son would change his heart. Looking anxious, I turned to the ex-wife, who seemed to share my feelings, saying, "Do you think getting your parents to pay off your mistake will make everything okay?" "I will never forgive you." The boss's son also pleaded with me. "Don't just stand there, persuade them." But of course, I had no intention of forgiving him and reiterated my intention to sue. Thanks to Dorothy's cooperation and the evidence, the custody of the child was safely transferred to the ex-wife. Furthermore, I relentlessly sued the boss and received compensation for emotional distress. The boss and his son cursed me and the ex-wife as money grubbers until the end, accusing us of forgetting past favors. However, the incident became known in the company, resulting in the boss's son being demoted and the boss being transferred to a window-side department. The boss's son had been using his father's position to his advantage, ordering employees around as he pleased. But since many employees had been taken care of by the boss since they were new, no one dared to confront the boss's son. As a result, no one stood up for him in this incident, and he became despised and avoided by everyone, eventually resigning due to loneliness. In the end, while being coldly looked upon by everyone, the boss's son said, "I had been thinking of quitting this low-level company anyway." But his arrogant attitude persisted in interviews, making it hard for him to find a job, and he is now living off part-time jobs. He continues to boast about his previous job wherever he goes, still being disliked by everyone. When the boss's wife found out about the incident, she demanded a divorce. The boss's wife, not knowing me, "I can't believe you would cause so much trouble for others," exclaimed in fury. Furthermore, since the house was in the ex-wife's name, he was promptly kicked out. Demoted to a window-side department and with a significantly reduced salary, the boss struggles to make ends meet while working multiple jobs to pay me compensation. I have become good friends with Margaret, the boss's son's ex-wife, since that day. It was an unexpected turn of events, but we found we had similar thoughts and values, and before we knew it, we had become friends. Matthew is also living happily with Margaret, enjoying each day. Since Matthew was more attached to Margaret than to the boss's son, I am relieved. Without the boss's help, I was able to successfully complete a project with the team, leading to my promotion and even busier days. Working hard and earning more, I moved to a pet-friendly apartment and finally got the pet I had always wanted. Having a comforting presence every day has made work more productive and life more fulfilling. Now, my joy is spending weekends at the park with Margaret, Matthew, and my pet, cherishing these happy days. Mother-in-law Sandra told me to go to the changing room. Sandra always turns off the water heater only when I'm bathing, as a form of harassment. I couldn't believe Sandra had prepared a warm bath. There must be something up. With a mean smirk, Sandra looked down on me, suspicious. I am Angela, 28 years old, living with my husband Christopher of the same age, both of us working. We met through a mutual friend at work, and this year marks our 3rd year of marriage. As our careers started to take off, we supported and motivated each other through thick and thin. Being in slightly different departments meant we didn't run into each other much at work, maintaining a relationship that felt like an extension of being good colleagues without mixing business with pleasure. While having children might change our perspective, fortunately, our parents-in-law, PIL, didn't seem too keen on having grandchildren, sparing us from any nagging on that front. However, the biannual pilgrimage to my husband's family home is, without exaggeration, my sole source of dread. His family's house is so far away it requires a plane ride from where we live. This means we have to book flights and pack days in advance. As the date looms closer, I find myself repeatedly checking the calendar, dreading its arrival. The main reason for my dread is the subtle bullying I endure from Sandra. It's the kind of pettiness that's not worth mentioning to others. Like the time during a family meal when Sandra forgot to set a spoon for me, leaving me to eat with a plastic one. Or when she accidentally tripped over my phone charger, leaving me with an uncharged phone the next day. Complaints about these minor, yet endless incidents didn't seem worth the energy. I confronted these issues in my first year. "I'm troubled when things like this happen." To which Sandra would sneer maliciously. "Are you really making a fuss over an accident? You're quite the scary daughter-in-law." Her delight in my frustration only made things worse. Engaging with her childish behavior and attitude was exhausting. So, I decided to maintain my composure, regardless of her actions, but this hardly allowed for any rest, leading to sleepless nights and increased irritability during our stays. While Sandra was problematic, my father-in-law, Fael, Paul, and my husband's sister Melissa were always welcoming. That made it even harder for me to bring up Sandra's behavior to my husband. Once again, as the end of the year approached, we found ourselves lugging our heavy bags, gasping for breath as we took flights, buses, and taxis to my husband's family home. The well-maintained garden at my husband's family home, a hobby of Paul's, symbolized his good health and retirement from his longtime job at a bank. Unlike Sandra, who was raised in a wealthy family and has a brash, self-indulgent character, Paul is solid and a bit shy. "Welcome, Christopher and Angela." Melissa, the younger sister-in-law still in college, is energetic and her smile is charming. Every holiday, her changing hair color initially made me think she was a stranger. Despite her flashy appearance and sharp features similar to Sandra's, she turned out to be a loving sister with a fondness for children. I've seen her getting along well with Christopher, occasionally playing games together. Even in the dead of winter, Melissa, wearing shorts, guided us. Once in the large living room, Sandra approached us with heavy footsteps, carrying cold coffee. Sandra has always seemed to see me as an adversary from the first meeting. It would have been more straightforward if she had spilled the coffee on me by pretending to trip, but with my husband and others watching, Sandra wouldn't dare. However, it's inevitable that after finishing the coffee, "Angela, please start with washing the dishes." Sandra starts ordering me around. Since we both work, we've shared household chores since before we were married. When I first mentioned this to Sandra, "I can't believe it. Making Christopher do chores when he's so tired," she screamed in horror. And then, "I'll straighten out Angela's attitude." So, whenever we visited my husband's family home, Sandra made sure I was burdened with almost all the chores. Initially, Christopher would say, "Stop it, Sandra. Angela's tired too." But each time, Sandra complained, "It's okay for me, if it satisfies Sandra." So I persuaded Christopher. However, this became a source of stress. Sandra dumped all sorts of menial tasks on me. In summer, it was weeding the garden, watering flowers, and cleaning the drains. In winter, it involved washing dishes, laundry, and cleaning the bathrooms, always the toughest jobs for the season. Moreover, if she caught me using hot water, she'd fly into a rage, and then I'd find the water heater turned off. I've thought about discussing this with Christopher, but Sandra's bullying only occurs when he's busy helping Paul with chores like organizing the garage or washing the car, making it hard to bring up. Sandra's main activity seems to be cooking when relatives gather. She dirties the kitchen I cleaned without hesitation and then tells me to clean up everything from preparation to washing up. Sure, Sandra's cooking might be delicious. People, perhaps out of politeness, unanimously praise it. Sandra, brimming with confidence, would say, "Right? It's all thanks to Angela's help." Even though she doesn't mean it, trying to make herself look better. Behind the scenes, her constant refrain is, "Can't you do anything right? Such a useless daughter-in-law." Yet, she dares to say such things. If she weren't careful about her audience, she might as well have been poisoning me. Paul and Melissa probably think Sandra and I get along fine since they only see the surface. I thought as long as I endured Sandra's harassment, there wouldn't be any trouble, but this recent winter, when she made sure I couldn't get hot water during my bath, I nearly lost my temper. I hadn't done anything to deserve such treatment from Sandra. Thinking about the hours spent traveling with heavy luggage just to face harassment here feels utterly ridiculous. Perhaps Sandra sees me as a fun toy. Unfortunately, I'm not idle enough to enjoy the mischief of a mean old lady. I wondered if there was any way to curb this irritation when an unexpected opportunity came on the second day of our visit. As usual, I was alone in the cold kitchen, finishing up the chores asked of me. Then, Sandra peeked over my shoulder. "Angela, the bathroom is free now. Go ahead and take a warm bath while it's still available. Everyone else is done." And said. Looking at the clock, it was already 9 p.m. From the living room, I could hear Paul and Melissa chatting. "Thank you. I'll go in after finishing this," I replied politely, though Sandra's intentions were transparent. I wish she could vary her harassment tactics. Because it's honestly not surprising anymore. After finishing the chores, I returned to the room where my husband and I were staying, finding him lounging in the same clothes as this morning. "Oh, haven't you taken a bath yet?" "Yeah, I fell asleep earlier. Long trips really tire me out." "Really? I just finished my tasks. Could you go ahead and bathe first? I need to change and rest a bit too." Christopher agreed without hesitation. Wonder if the water's gone cold. So, Sandra mentioned it's still warm. I told him. I felt a bit guilty knowing what might happen to Christopher, but using her beloved son seemed like an effective lesson for Sandra. After Christopher left, I decided to check my emails leisurely. Soon, I was startled by Christopher's shouting from the bathroom. His anger was unlike anything I'd heard, even in our arguments, making me rush towards the noise. Paul and Melissa were already there, surrounding Sandra with Christopher. "Why would you do something so dangerous? Slipping and getting hurt would be serious." Christopher continued to yell, unfazed by Sandra's downturned head. The bathroom was pitch dark. As expected, Sandra had played the same prank she always does on me, but this time on Christopher. Christopher was furious because he has a mild fear of the dark, stemming from being accidentally locked in a dark place during a childhood game of hide and seek, making him uneasy in the dark since. When he entered the bathtub, he found it empty, drained of water. Thinking someone had mistakenly removed the plug, he tried to refill it, but no hot water came from the tap. And then the lights were suddenly turned off, causing him to panic and shout. Surprised, Sandra inadvertently opened the bathroom door, encountering Christopher. "Mom, you know I've always been scared of the dark, right? I went in because I heard the water was still warm, but it was freezing. It's not what you think. I thought Angela was in there." Christopher didn't miss Sandra slipping up. "Why are you always doing this to Angela?" Sandra turned pale and desperately tried to cover it up. "It's not like that." "Well, not exactly. I thought everyone had finished bathing and nobody was around. Why isn't there any hot water? Could the water heater be broken?" Sandra squeezed past everyone towards the water heater. "It's old, after all. Quite the trouble, isn't it?" she said, trying to tap it. While everyone watched in silence, Sandra, realizing how pitiful it was to do such a thing, next entered the bathroom and turned on the shower tap. Suddenly, hot water vigorously started gushing out, steaming. "See, it seems to be working now." Truly whimsical, quite the nuisance. Sandra tried to muster a forced smile, but Christopher was relentless. "Is it common for it to break and fix itself so conveniently? If that's really the case, it would be rude not to have it repaired before relatives gather." Sandra was at a loss for words. Her expression betrayed a stubborn refusal to give up on the situation. "Just wait a minute." Paul, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. He seemed to have gone somewhere and then reappeared with a piece of paper in hand. "We just replaced the water heater last month. It's still under warranty, so we can call if there's really a problem. I hope you haven't been using the water heater as an excuse to make Angela feel bad all this time," Paul said in a low voice, making Sandra stiffen up. Christopher took the water heater contract from Paul and scrutinized it. Melissa also peeked over, looking at Sandra with a pitying gaze. "I've never heard Mom say anything was wrong with the water heater before. If anything, I use the most hot water since I have the longest hair." "Me too. I love hot baths, so I'm in the bathtub all year round," Melissa and Paul said, nodding in agreement. It turned out that when the water heater was replaced, the brand changed, and indeed, there were only bills from last month for the current model. This piece of paper became the definitive evidence exposing Sandra's lie. Thanks to Paul, who had been a meticulous banker and household manager for years, everything came to light, and Sandra's excuses didn't hold up. Such an obvious lie was unlikely to be believed by anyone. Christopher, still half naked, turned to me, apologizing. "Angela, I'm sorry for making you bear this alone." Following him, Paul and Melissa also apologized, which surprised me. Sandra, too, begrudgingly apologized while glaring at me with sharp eyes, clearly unrepentant. Afterward, Sandra was almost dragged back to the back room by Paul. Perhaps she was going to be scolded by him. Having only seen his gentle side, even I felt a chill. The next day, I was called over by Christopher and his family again. We sat around a grand table in the living room. Paul was the first to speak. "I've heard all about the harassment my wife has been causing Angela up until now. I want to apologize again. It was truly unforgivable." Following his apology, Sandra apologized on the spot as well. Her demeanor was completely different from yesterday, sobbing and soaking her handkerchief. It seems she was severely scolded by Paul. The reason for the harassment was something absurd. She couldn't stand the idea of Christopher doing household chores. At Paul's words, I thought to myself, of course. Sandra had been saying that to me from the start, and to think she could harass someone for years over just that reason shows quite the persistence. However, Christopher was still furious. "We decided together about this when we got married, didn't we? Angela works just as much as I do, and it's outdated to think that housework is just for women." Christopher tends to go on when he starts talking, so Melissa managed to calm him down. "Using Angela to make your own life easier, even if it's just twice a year for Thanksgiving and New Year's, isn't right. Then why didn't you say anything to me?" Melissa added, causing Sandra, who had been shrinking, to shrink even more. Then Christopher continued. That's why I'll be coming here alone from now on, and I won't stay over anymore. We'll welcome Mom and Dad to our house, but Angela won't be coming here. I hadn't realized the conversation had progressed this far without my knowledge. Sandra couldn't meet my gaze and just looked down. We had already booked a flight that evening, so Christopher and I went back to our room to pack. Even thinking we wouldn't come here anymore didn't feel real yet. Maybe I should have consulted Christopher before things escalated this much, but there's no point dwelling on the past. I've decided to endure the harassment on my own for these 3 years, so I think it's okay to give myself some credit for my perseverance. I hugged Paul and Melissa a bit longer than usual, embedding my farewell and gratitude towards my husband's family. Afterwards, Thanksgiving and New Year's became an opportunity for us to spend time as a couple, and we started enjoying traveling together. It seems Christopher wasn't very fond of going home in the first place, reluctantly returning every year due to Sandra's numerous calls. Sandra might have resented me for stealing her beloved eldest son, but I'm glad Christopher himself didn't adopt such thinking and maintained his principles. It's embarrassing to say, but this was an event that made me fall in love with my husband all over again. Years later, we were blessed with a child in our 30s, and Paul and Melissa rushed to be with us for the birth. I was bracing myself for Sandra to come as well, but Paul stubbornly refused to let her, saying, "With her, who knows what she would say to Angela, who's just given birth and is vulnerable." Paul probably wanted to be there together, but he prioritized my feelings. Melissa seemed to be holding a baby for the first time, completely devoted to the child. She's studying childcare in college, so I'm looking forward to entrusting our child to her in the future. While Christopher and Paul were away, Melissa whispered to me that since we stopped visiting, relatives invited by Sandra started noticing my absence and suspected harassment. Despite Sandra's desperate resistance, the rumors spread among the relatives. Sandra ended up feeling isolated not only within the family but also among the relatives. Having been arrogant towards the relatives too, she faced backlash, and nobody wanted to visit her husband's family anymore, Melissa told me. "Well, it's good that those annoying gatherings are gone," she said with a smile, making me laugh too. Melissa mentioned she liked the area every time she visited us and started thinking about looking for a job here. Hearing that, Christopher seemed visibly pleased. "My husband has rented out a high-end pub. We're even inviting the poor people like you." At our high school reunion, I was looked down upon by my former classmate, Jennifer, whom I hadn't seen since graduation. While it's understandable that her knowledge of me is limited to my high school days, it's incredibly rude of her to make assumptions without even listening to what I have to say. But that's just how Jennifer has always been. "Too bad. Tell your husband to cancel all the deals then." "What?" The moment my friend informed Jennifer about my company, she let out a scream and nearly had a seizure. She was helped by those around her as she collapsed onto the sofa. It seemed to be quite a shock for her, but that's none of my concern. My name is Brian, and I'm a 30-year-old company CEO. The path that led me here has been tumultuous, and my high school self couldn't have even begun to imagine my current situation. My father had established a factory before I was born and worked as both a technician and a factory manager. It was a semiconductor business that dealt with only a limited number of companies. As major corporations were withdrawing one after another, my father continued to run the factory on a small scale for the sake of the clients who trusted him and continued to do business with him. While most of America's manufacturing industry, especially the automotive sector, relies on semiconductor supply from overseas manufacturers, many companies hold my father's factory's technical capabilities in high regard. Thanks to those connections, the factory's earnings were listed. However, although my father was a skilled technician, he lacked experience as a manager. He wasn't versatile enough to balance both the factory work and the management tasks, so my mother took charge of the management side. As an only child, I grew up observing both aspects of the business, and I still remember looking up to both my father and mother, thinking they were so cool even as a child. Our family was affluent and lacked nothing, but since neither my father nor mother was attached to possessions, we lived in an apartment, drove a compact and lightweight car, and my mother preferred fast fashion because she could wear it without worrying. Because of this, no one ever thought I was a rich kid. My classmates' parents and the adults in our local community were likely aware of my family's financial situation, as we ran the largest factory in the area. Fortunately, none of them were the type to share that information with their children, and all of my friends treated me equally without any discrimination. I was able to enjoy a peaceful and happy childhood. It wasn't until I entered high school that changes started to occur in my personal life. Influenced by my parents, I had been exposed to topics like mechanical structures and business management from a young age, which expanded my curiosity. I was eager to learn, so I enrolled in a college preparatory school. There, I met Jennifer, who was in the same class as me. My first impression of her was terrible. Right after starting school, Jennifer approached me in an overly familiar manner.
Hey, which middle school did you come from? Since you gave a speech at the entrance ceremony, does that mean you got the highest score on the entrance exam?
I had been selected as the freshman representative and gave a speech at the entrance ceremony. There was no doubt that I had done well on the entrance exam.
I'm from Sunset Heights Middle School. I don't know how I did on the entrance exam. I was just asked to give a speech, that's all. Sunset Heights Middle School? Never heard of it. Where is that town located?
Jennifer asked, then smirked condescendingly when I told her the name of the town.
A rural area with nothing but fields and factories, huh? I didn't know there was even a school there. How many students per class? Wait, do you even have more than 2 classes? She mocked. We had 25 students per class and 2 classes. It wasn't a big school, but we had a decent number of students, and it was lively and fun.
With a nasty grin.
My middle school had 35 students per class and 5 classes.
Jennifer bragged. It was information I couldn't care less about, but I figured she was the type who always wanted to one-up others in superficial and obvious ways. I decided to keep my guard up around Jennifer for a while. However, unexpectedly, after the entrance ceremony, she stopped looking down on me and instead started cozying up to me.
Brian, about the math homework. Can we compare answers?
She would constantly ask me about schoolwork, bring up trivial topics, and hover around me. As a result, by the time our first winter break rolled around, our classmates were spreading annoying rumors that we were dating. Being spotted forcibly dragged to a cafe by Jennifer after school on her birthday also fueled the weird rumors. She had begged me to help her study for an upcoming cram school test, so I reluctantly went along, but that was all it was. When we became sophomores, much to my dismay, Jennifer and I ended up in the same class again despite my hopes for a class change. She continued to cling to me as always. In our new class, everyone immediately started teasing us about being a couple.
Hey, don't be jealous just because we're close.
She didn't deny it and even seemed somewhat pleased, so I quickly refuted the idea.
Don't tease her too much, it's annoying.
When I said that, the whole class got excited again because I defended her. The more I said something, the more excited they seemed to get, so I kept silent. Every break time, Jennifer would come up to me, and I got tired of being teased by everyone around me, so as soon as class was over, I started leaving the classroom and spending time elsewhere. One day, I was a little worried about preparing for the next class, so I went back to the classroom a little early and heard Jennifer talking about me in front of everyone. Maybe she let her guard down because I hadn't returned to the classroom yet, but she was talking loudly in a boastful manner.
I have a good man named Brian. He's at the top of his class, good at sports, and has a promising future. I think he'll be a doctor in the future because he's in the science department. I'm glad I got him now.
When everyone around her heard that we were dating after all, Jennifer gave a nasty smile.
I've already established the fact.
And said. I had no idea what she was talking about, so I rushed into the classroom and confronted Jennifer.
What do you mean, established the fact?
I thought she would be surprised when I suddenly appeared behind her, but she didn't even look uncomfortable. Jennifer continued to sit with her legs crossed in her usual brazen manner, talking to me as if she were admonishing me. "Don't be shy, Brian. Let's make it official at this point." When I refused, saying that we weren't in that kind of relationship, Jennifer came up to me and suddenly intertwined her arm with mine. "We did it on my birthday, didn't you?" The whole class got excited and made a fuss over her suggestive way of saying it. I clearly said to that, "It was for studying. You came crying to me to teach you before the cram school test, and I'm not so cold-hearted that I could refuse that." When I told the truth, my classmates all fell silent at once. "No, not that. On the way home," Jennifer said, putting her hand to her lips. I felt sick to my stomach. My classmates were making a big fuss and were delighted. "I don't want you to tell that kind of lie. We went home normally after studying, didn't we?" "I'm sorry. We promised to keep it a secret. It's just that Brian wouldn't say anything about it." Jennifer looked up at me. I thought I had been set up. If someone said it like that, anyone who heard it would think Jennifer's story was true and that I was lying out of embarrassment. "There's not a single thing between me and Jennifer that's suspicious or intimate. If you keep making false accusations like this, I'm willing to declare here and now that our friendship is over." I strongly appealed that it was completely unfounded, but Jennifer cried out loud. The whole class took her side, and I became the villain. I was called all sorts of bad names, like I was scum, a man who satisfies only his desires and doesn't take responsibility. I felt even more uncomfortable in the classroom than before, and I stopped talking to anyone in class. To begin with, I only had a few close friends, and when we changed classes in 10th grade, I was separated from those friends, and Jennifer was the only one I talked to much. Because of her, I couldn't make new friends, and I became isolated in class, but this was nothing new. The small amount of conversation I had before just went to zero, that's all. Jennifer was still the only one who remained outwardly devoted to me on the surface. I knew that this too was part of her strategy. My high school life changed drastically in 10th grade. The situation at home also changed completely. The supply of semiconductors could not keep up with demand, and major customers withdrew from the semiconductor business one after another, resulting in a loss of customers. Dad's factory could only produce a limited amount and could not mass produce. Even if the factory were to be expanded for mass production, there would be no one to make the products because the engineers had gone overseas. Nevertheless, Dad said he would continue the factory for the customers who would continue to do business with him. The debt that increased at this time amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars. Our family became poor all at once. The steep decline of the semiconductor business was reported in numerous news stories. Dad's company, the largest in the area, was also featured on the local news, and Dad spoke about the difficult situation in an interview. Because of this, I became the talk of the town and instantly became a famous tragic figure. As if my already gloomy high school life wasn't bad enough, dark clouds were looming over me once again. The person whose attitude changed most noticeably was Jennifer Adams. She used to cling to me all the time, but now she wouldn't even come near me. It was more convenient for me anyway, so I didn't pay much attention to it, but when she made a snide comment in passing, I realized her true intentions. "You're such a loser. I'm not interested in poor guys like you." I didn't say anything back to her, didn't even make eye contact, and just kept reading the paperback I was holding. Unsatisfied, she continued to make more snide remarks. "I heard your family is having a hard time, so college is out of the question, huh? Are you going to get a job instead of going to college? Or maybe even drop out of high school? Sorry about that." Taking advantage of my lack of response, Jennifer said what she wanted to say, sneered, and left. In 11th grade, classes are divided into liberal arts and science tracks. Thinking that I only had to endure a little longer before being separated from Jennifer in the liberal arts track, I put up with the humiliation. In 11th grade, classes were divided by career path, and I was finally able to get away from Jennifer. The last year of high school was very peaceful, and although I was struggling financially due to family circumstances, thanks to the education insurance policy my mom had taken out, I was able to attend school until graduation. However, when it came to going to college, it was a different story. I considered attending college with a scholarship, but I decided to give up on higher education because I wanted to help my dad with the family business as soon as possible. Somehow getting wind of this information, Jennifer approached me again when we happened to run into each other during lunch.
I heard you gave up on college? What a waste, considering your good grades. College isn't everything. Taking over the family business is my dream. I'm just doing it a little sooner, that's all.
When I said that, Jennifer gave me another disgusting smile and loudly mocked me.
You're taking over a company that's about to go bankrupt? Are you out of your mind? You'll be unemployed as soon as you start working. I want to help out as soon as possible so it doesn't go bankrupt.
Unusually for me, I snapped back in irritation. I don't mind if she puts me down, but there's no reason to disparage my dad's factory too. Jennifer said what she wanted to say and walked away. Not knowing what to do with my clenched fist, I punched the wall with it. The solid concrete wall in the hallway only made a dull sound, and the pain just bounced back. That was the last memory I had of being involved with her. Since then, up until now, 12 years after graduating from high school, I haven't seen Jennifer, and her existence has completely vanished from my memory. After graduating from high school, I took over my dad's factory, went through busy days, unexpected opportunities, and various experiences, and at the age of 30, I am forging ahead as a business owner. At that time, a single text message brought back my unpleasant memories. It was an invitation to a high school reunion. Apparently, they rented a large venue and were holding it for the entire grade level. I was going to reply that I wouldn't attend, but I also have some fun memories from my last year of high school. I have good friends there, and I don't need to sacrifice reuniting with them for someone like Jennifer. I decided to attend the reunion. The reunion venue was one of the large halls that is also used for wedding receptions, and it was rented out exclusively for us. To have a party of this scale, I thought the fee per person would be at least $300, but it was only $80. Maybe someone had connections. From the looks of it, the attendance rate was about 80%. I drank while looking at the familiar faces. A friend I was close with noticed me and came running over. We chatted and had a good time for a while, and during that time I didn't see Jennifer at all, which was a relief. But that relief was short-lived, and a dizzying turn of events occurred as the reunion began. Apparently, Jennifer was the one who planned this reunion, and she appeared as the MC. I had the impression that she always liked conspicuous activities, but I never thought we would be reunited in this way. I suddenly felt like going home. But the party was buffet style. I just had to avoid her at every turn and get through it. I kept an eye on her movements and focused on enjoying the party without getting any closer to her. However, when I went to get a drink during a break in the conversation, I had the misfortune of running into Jennifer. I thought she was out of sight for a while, but it seems she had been following me from behind.
Long time no see.
Jennifer spoke to me without even giving me a chance to greet her.
You've been following me with your eyes the whole time, you pervert.
Being told that, I remembered. Jennifer is a woman with an inflated ego.
I figured you wouldn't want to talk to me, so I was looking at you to avoid you. Huh? Don't flatter yourself. I had completely forgotten about you. You're just a nobody, but you were giving me perverted looks, so I got uncomfortable and protested.
Seeing Jennifer use polite language that doesn't suit her, her true nature is still visible and it makes me feel sick. I decided to leave the scene without engaging with her. I know all too well that conversing with her is a waste of time.
Hey, wait a minute. Hitting on me, a married woman with those lecherous eyes. Married? You got married, congratulations.
When I said that, Jennifer suddenly became cheerful and started bragging. Jennifer's husband is the CEO of an electronics manufacturer, and they've become wealthy. I had heard of her husband's company name before, but it was a pointless boast, so once again,
congratulations,
I said and turned my back, but then,
you're still working at that factory, aren't you? Your poverty is seeping out. No woman would want to marry a poor guy like you. Are you worried about me? Thank you. Please continue to think of me as invisible.
As I said that and tried to leave, she grabbed my arm tightly. With my arm in her grasp, Jennifer told the venue staff to bring her a microphone and suddenly started announcing the after-party.
Thank you everyone for coming today. We have an after-party prepared, so I'll give you the details now.
The eyes of the venue all at once focused on Jennifer and me, whose arm she was grabbing. I heard whispers speculating about the two of us. My husband has rented out a high-end pub. We're even inviting the poor people like you. Still holding the microphone, Jennifer hurled verbal abuse at me with a condescending look on her face. The people around us were getting even more restless. I finally decided to get my revenge. Too bad. Tell your husband to cancel all the business deals. What? Jennifer looked at me with a surprised face. What do you mean? There's no way our company would do business with a small-town factory like yours. Be careful about making statements that would embarrass Jennifer's husband. Even though it's been 12 years, Jennifer hasn't changed at all and is still unpleasantly meddling with me. As I thought about finally getting back at her, my tone became more and more scathing. More importantly, what was that about a business deal earlier? You should have backed off while I was still playing dumb. Also, you shouldn't carelessly mention your husband's company name. Jennifer listened to me with a distorted expression on her face, looking like she wanted to say something. Jennifer's husband's company is an electronics manufacturer, right? I know them well since their performance is good. Their sales rep was very passionate, and we already have regular clients, so we weren't planning on increasing our business partners, but I gave in to his enthusiasm and decided to provide some of our products, albeit a very small amount. Why would you buy anything from an old small-town factory? Our company is rapidly overtaking existing manufacturers with high-quality products and achieving sales results. One of my friends who had been listening to our conversation quietly spoke to Jennifer. At that moment, Jennifer let out a scream and started shouting. Lies! Lies! Double exclamation mark! Absolutely lies! Double exclamation mark! No way! Double exclamation mark! This poor man, the CEO of that famous company. As Jennifer seemed to be about to have a fit, the people around her supported her and sat her down on a nearby sofa. It's true. The predecessor of my current company was my dad's company. We mainly operated a semiconductor business at the factory, but at one point, due to trade friction, customers withdrew from the semiconductor business and we were on the verge of bankruptcy. But as we continued to believe, an opportunity arrived. We brought in new technology from overseas, and when we developed that market, demand surged, we paid off our debts, and management stabilized. As we collaborated with peer companies, we merged and became the current company. Jennifer had a dissatisfied look on her face, seeming to be hung up on how someone like me could become the CEO of that company. So much has happened in these 12 years that it's not a story I can easily explain. The venue staff called out to us, and the reunion ended with an ominous atmosphere. With Jennifer, the key person, dejected, she received a call from the after-party venue. Since they couldn't cancel the reservation for the bar that Jennifer's husband had rented out with his connections, the participants headed to that high-class bar. The high-class bar that Jennifer's husband had reserved for us was located on the top floor of the current venue, so we just had to take the elevator as guided by the staff. Jennifer's plan was to smugly guide everyone through the building and boast endlessly while going up the elevator, but upon unexpectedly learning my true identity, she was sulking while leaning on her friends. While riding the elevator, Jennifer's face turned pale as she searched on her smartphone to see if what I was saying was true. It was because she had confirmed it was a fact. I still can't accept it. What kind of connections did you use to climb to the top, you uneducated low-income scum? Jennifer glared at me while gnashing her teeth in frustration. Let me tell you, after graduating high school, I was working at my dad's factory, but my dad's apprentice advised me to learn technology abroad. At that time, I had a dinner with the CEO of a client company who had been fond of me since I was little, and when I told him I wanted to study abroad, I was able to go to Taiwan through his introduction. I attended a local university there while also learning skills through an internship at a factory. I returned to the US at 25 and started a new business based on the technology one brought back. Even after returning, I continued working as an engineer at my dad's factory while also advancing new business development. The new business was still a rare endeavor in the country, so various people came to tour it. CEOs of large corporations and general trading companies, university professors, and others visited the factory and showed high interest in my new business, even making generous offers to collaborate. Taking advantage of those offers and utilizing the communication skills I had cultivated while studying abroad, I was also able to learn at various companies myself. All of this was thanks to my dad, who had built up trust by continuing the business without compromising quality even during difficult times. As this went on, my dad and mom told me to take over as CEO, and I became CEO at the age of 28. After that, I had discussions with the CEOs of the companies I had been jointly developing businesses with, aiming to streamline operations, reduce costs, and increase profits, and we achieved a holding company structure. It was the wish of the CEOs to entrust the company to a young person who would lead the future rather than themselves as they grew older, and so I became the CEO. The more she heard the story, the more miserable Jennifer's expression became. As we talked, we arrived at the high-class bar venue for the after-party. It was the best location with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the night view. As if she didn't want to hear any more of my boasting, Jennifer immediately distanced herself from me upon entering the bar. Perhaps realizing she couldn't look down on me anymore, she now started bragging to our classmates. Everyone, thanks to the connections of my husband, who is the CEO of a famous manufacturer, we were able to rent out this place that normally requires reservations at least a year in advance for my reunion. And it's my husband's treat, so drink as much as you like. Cheers! As soon as she finished her opening remarks, Jennifer started opening wine bottles with incredible vigor. Her friends around her tried to stop her out of concern, but Jennifer wouldn't stop. This is a rare opportunity to have high-class wine. You can't buy it in stores, and you can't drink it at any old restaurant. Since Jennifer stopped pestering me, I decided to enjoy myself. No matter how many times I come, the view is great. I know this place is atmospheric and beautiful even on rainy days. Because when this building was being designed, I was the first to secure a contract for the top floor and create this bar. To be precise, when the construction plan for this building came out, the construction company approached me about contracting several floors. Having a well-known company would help brand the building. So I chose the top floor and asked them to create a high-class bar. As our overseas business grew, I wanted to have a top-tier establishment that could be used for entertaining clients at any time. I never thought I would end up coming here through an introduction from Jennifer's husband, but it was none other than me who gave priority usage rights to our business partners as well. It's only natural for a company that does business with us. You should drink some high-class alcohol while you have the chance too. Even if you're a CEO, you grew up poor and have probably never been to a place like this. And it's my husband's treat, after all. Perhaps emboldened by the alcohol, Jennifer's timid attitude from just a moment ago had completely vanished, and she was back to being her usual arrogant self. No, you keep saying it's a treat, but did you know? This bar is actually owned by my company. As a perk for our business partners, we provide it for free up to 10 times a year, depending on the transaction amount. I think Jennifer's husband's company gets it once a year. That's what they use this time. Jennifer's face turned bright red as she glared at me. Are you trying to one-up me again by making things up? There's no way a company would be provided this 10 times. My husband's company has annual sales of $300 million. If I said my annual sales are $80 billion, would that be one-upping too? I don't see any value in such ridiculous posturing. If you can't believe I'm the owner of this bar, I'll give you some special wine that's not on the menu. Saying that, I called over Jason, the bar manager. Long time no see, sir. I heard your school friend is organizing today's event. If it's not too much trouble, we just got some good fish in, so would it be all right to serve carpaccio to everyone? That sounds great. Could you please do that? And that wine would be good too. Jason bowed and said, Understood. He then headed to the wine cellar in the back. Jennifer was gaping at Jason's retreating figure with a stupid look on her face. Do you believe me now? Jennifer was crushed, tears of frustration welling up in her eyes. At Jason's cue, the bartenders started lining up the carpaccio on the tables. As these are the CEO's schoolmates, we have prepared this rare and luxurious fish carpaccio for you. We hope you all enjoy it. All the attention suddenly focused on me. Jennifer had been bragging to everyone that it was her connections, but ironically, the root of those connections was me. Within a few minutes, Jason brought over the special wine.
This is a rare 1971 red wine.
1971 was a great year for red wines. Since it's 50 years old, I think it will have quite a rich flavor, but I'm looking forward to trying it for the first time too. It was a wine I had been saving for a special occasion, but I still have a stock of rare wines, so I decided to bring it out. It may seem like I'm doing this to spite Jennifer, but if I have to put up with her nonsense any longer, I need to thoroughly crush her fighting spirit or I'll end up accumulating unnecessary stress.
What a spiteful guy. What's so special about this slightly expensive wine? I once paid $30,000 in cash at a high-class bar. I think calling this wine slightly expensive is too much of an understatement. First of all, you can't even get many bottles, and one bottle costs $40,000. More importantly, what high-class bar are you talking about?
Jennifer's face suddenly turned pale as if she had sobered up in an instant, but after thinking for a while, she gave a defiant smile.
My husband is a very tolerant man. He tells me to surround myself with men so that I can stay beautiful forever. That's why I just play at bars with lots of men. But you're right, since I have the chance, I want you, the CEO of a big company, to service me.
Jennifer suddenly sat me down next to her, took off her shoes, and put both feet on my thighs. Moreover, she started dripping red wine on her own feet. It also spilled onto my suit pants.
Lick it.
I let out a deep sigh of utter exasperation. I wanted to forcefully push her away, but I couldn't be rough with her, so I put Jennifer's feet back on the floor and threw my handkerchief at her.
You don't need to return it. As I said at the first party, the deal with your husband is off.
As I tried to leave, Jennifer clung to me. No. Please. Anything but that. And started crying.
Unfortunately, a man's work can change based on his wife's words and actions. If a wife like you is by his side, it could have a negative impact on her husband's work. If you're talking down to him at home too, your husband must be mentally cornered and it's probably affecting his work.
Jennifer's husband's company had momentum, but recently, new business development had stagnated and it was on a downward trend. My company also has a SIM card manufacturing business similar to Jennifer's husband's company, but we have been gradually downsizing it in accordance with the times, and now we are focusing on developing embedded SIMs. By not having cards or chips, manufacturing costs, distribution costs, and the cost of installing physical SIMs can be greatly reduced. Because of this, as long as Jennifer's husband's company maintained the status quo, I had long thought about ending our business relationship soon.
Hey, please keep this a secret from my husband. We'll be in trouble if you don't keep doing business with us as before. The money.
As soon as she mentioned money, Jennifer suddenly became tongue-tied.
Jennifer, enough already. You're causing too much trouble for Brian. You've been going too far since high school.
Suddenly, Jennifer's friend Susan spoke up.
When I said I liked Brian, you suddenly started getting close to him, right? But as soon as his family fell on hard times, you quickly changed your attitude and said, if you're okay with my second hand, go ahead. He's just an old rag now. You're a really nasty woman.
Even though it was in the past, I felt a little fluttery upon hearing her confession. However, what Jennifer said to Susan was awful. After that, one classmate after another continued to criticize Jennifer.
You ungrateful lot. Who do you think got you the discounted price for the first party and the reservation for this place?
And then, a shocking truth was revealed here.
You're in the middle of a divorce trial with your husband right now, aren't you? Is your husband properly providing money? Don't come asking for it later, okay?
According to what we heard, Jennifer had spent a large sum of money on playing around with men, and despite incurring her husband's anger, she showed no improvement, so he filed for divorce and they were in the middle of a trial. She was trying to hold on to her husband's status and wealth at all costs, so in order to make him think she had reformed during the trial period, she needed money to return at least some of what she had squandered. So, she planned the reunion to find people who might shower her with gifts. Both my classmates and I felt quite disgusted as we listened to the story.
How dare you so easily talk about my situation?
Jennifer tried to scratch Susan's face with her long nails, and I intervened to stop her. Since Jennifer had rushed at me with force, I simply used my body as a shield, but Jennifer fell over from the recoil. At that moment, business cards scattered from Jennifer's bag. They were all the business cards of the men she had been playing with. The place fell silent, and Jennifer, her hair and clothes disheveled, collapsed on the floor crying and wailing.
Everyone, please continue enjoying the drinks and food. Jason, please take care of everyone.
Jason responded swiftly, and as I tended to Jennifer, I urged her to have her husband come pick her up. After settling the shortfall in the cost of the first party, Jennifer's husband showed up to pick up Jennifer. As soon as he saw me, he apologized with a pale face, so I told him to raise his head and said we would discuss future matters another day. I saw off Jennifer's husband as he took Jennifer with him. In the end, the deal with Jennifer's husband's company was cancelled. I received a sincere apology, but even before the issue with Jennifer, I felt that the business prospects were rapidly declining, so I politely declined. As for Jennifer, apparently her divorce was finalized within a month of the reunion. Her husband had noticed her continuing to play around with men and maxing out multiple credit cards, so he finally gave up on her. Jennifer's husband didn't cover her debts and kicked her out of the house, and when Jennifer's parents learned the reason for the divorce, they were furious and disowned her. Jennifer accumulated even more debt due to her financial struggles. I heard she even turned to illegal lenders, and the debt collectors were relentless, with the sound of them pounding on her door echoing through her cheap apartment every day, causing trouble for the neighbors and getting her evicted from the apartment as well. Afterward, I heard from a classmate that she was barely getting by living at her workplace while doing night work. My new business development was progressing smoothly, and I secured large contracts, so management was going well. In the midst of being consumed by busy days, there was something I suddenly remembered. It was Susan's past affection for me that she had talked about. I never imagined that someone had feelings for me in that high school classroom where I walked with my head down. 6 months after the reunion, I visited that high-class bar alone for the first time and, feeling like I was experiencing my first love, I kept that confession close to my heart and ordered a special wine. "Jason, please bring out a rare red wine from the early 2000s. As I imagined her sweet feelings of love, I felt my heart grow warm and savored the aroma of the wine from that time. "May I have a seat?" A woman wearing a high-quality dress in a brighter color than at the reunion, stimulating my heart. Apparently, she had asked Jason to make a reservation for her on the day I would come. This reunion would continue far into the future.